Welcome to Inside the Walls with William Pasquale, brought to you by Perner Frederick Commercial Real Estate. Welcome to a new level of commercial real estate built upon relationships and proven results. Good afternoon and welcome to Inside the Walls with William Pasquale. And today we'll be speaking with Liz Smith, Chief Administrative Officer at the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, otherwise known to the folks here in the greater Delaware Valley as SEPTA, the sixth largest transit agency in the United States. Now, in that role, she serves as a key strategic advisor to the general manager, taking responsibility for special projects and leading key initiatives. Liz holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Pennsylvania State University and a master's degree in civil engineering from Villanova University. And she's also a registered professional engineer. Liz has been recognized by several organizations for her contributions, including being named the 2018 Woman of Distinction by the Philadelphia Business Journal, and as well as a member by the WTS Philadelphia. And she serves as the director of the public agency participation on the WTS Philadelphia board, as well as an advisor to SEPTA's Women in Transit group. So let me introduce to you Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hi, William. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And I just feel really honored. And first of all, I just would like to take this opportunity to really, thank you, the general manager, Leslie Richards, and really everyone at SEPTA, from the conductors, the engineers, the ticket takers, bus drivers, mechanics, everyone at SEPTA for the job that they've done during the pandemic. You truly are on the front lines as essential workers, and I'm not sure that you all get enough credit for the work that you do at the level that you do and getting people where they need to be. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, Liz, since this show is going out to a larger audience outside the greater Philadelphia area, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your role at SEPTA?
Sure. So as you mentioned, my background is really started in civil engineering. I've always been interested in transportation, and at this point in my career, 20 years in, have kind of worked my way through a couple different kinds of transportation. Mm-hmm. After leaving Penn State, I started working in the private sector, really focused on doing traffic analysis, very thrilling. And then I kind of felt a calling to move into more of a government role. I worked for a while at the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. That's where I found my love of project management. And I managed a really exciting group of programs for PennDOT that were called their transportation enhancements. And these were kind of the fun transportation projects: trails, bikeways, restoration of historic buildings. And I then was given the opportunity to come to SEPTA and manage a little project that some of you may have heard about called King of Prussia Rail.
A true story. My grandparents had the first general store in King of Prussia.
Oh, great.
Yes.
And so that just opened so many doors for me at SEPTA. It really gave me some great experience and background managing a big, multi-billion-dollar project. And I'm happy to say that we've continued to progress that project. We're actually getting ready for a set of public meetings in December to release the finalized route. So that really gave me a good bird's eye view of SEPTA. And then recently, with our new general manager, Leslie Richards, I moved into a new position, Chief Administrative Officer, really to support our general manager and our senior leadership team, make sure that we can get some of our strategic initiatives completed, and really, work on some fun and exciting projects.
And it's an amazing time to be at SEPTA, and as well as especially during the middle of, the pandemic, what's been going on. As you know, like the city of Philadelphia is mandating that offices are permitted to be open, to only have the employees in the office that cannot work remotely. And with the case counts rising exponentially of COVID, what is the current ridership strategy at SEPTA?
Well, you'll see me, myself, I'm home today.
Yeah.
I wish my office looked like this. It does not. But yes, we all have to do our part by staying home when we can do our job from home. That's what we need to do. So I would say our ridership strategy right now is what it's been throughout the pandemic. We are continuing to focus on serving essential employees. So SEPTA never shut down. During the pandemic, we kept running every single day. As you mentioned, we had lots of, I would call them heroic frontline employees that showed up to work every day and kept our system running, whether they were operators that everyone kind of sees, or people that were a little bit more behind the scenes, right? Our maintenance custodians, our vehicle maintenance personnel that kept all of those vehicles running, our sales team, our cashiers, they all kept coming in every day. And though we saw our ridership drop pretty significantly, we did not see it drop to zero. What we really saw happen during the pandemic is that SEPTA is an essential service for our region. And every day we carried those employees that were, not just going to work at the hospitals. I think that's what a lot of people think of, but people that were stocking grocery store shelves, that were manning call centers, that were cleaning and serving food within our healthcare system. We were there for them, and we will continue to be there for them, during whatever comes at us over the next couple weeks or months. One of the things that we did is we really set up some strong communication channels with our area employers, so we could speak to them regularly and figure out what their needs were going to be, especially at the hospitals or companies like Amazon or UPS. And we're continuing those conversations. So what we're working on right now is trying to figure out how we can be most responsive to the needs of those essential employers in the region. How do we need to shift some service around to make sure that we can cover their shifts, their shift workers, and things like that. So I think that's really our ridership strategy right now, is to make sure we can serve those essential employees that really need us right now.
Now, when you had this broad list of conversations with major employers in the Philadelphia area, have you found that a lot of them saying that they were planning on? If not for these new restrictions that were put in by the city, which are obviously to protect people, were they planning on coming back, sooner, like after the first of the year, or were they really going further out than that from what your conversations were like?
For the largest employers in our region, they really are waiting until a vaccine is widely available and distributed. Yeah. We have seen our ridership kind of tick back up over the past couple weeks, as we've seen, or months really, as we've seen case counts hit low levels.
Right.
But we have not seen those employers really, the large employers, especially in the center city high-rise office buildings, they have not brought their employees back. And a lot of it, to be honest, has to do with the fact that those buildings are serviced by elevators, and you have to socially distance in those elevators, so only so many people can really come into the office at once.
Indeed. And now with the ridership and the regional rails running with about 85% fewer people than the pre-pandemic numbers, and that's even an increase. I note that post Labor Day, those numbers did increase. So they're right around 85% people now than they were pre-pandemic. And I guess in the buses, the trolleys, and the city subways, they're down at 70% from pre-pandemic numbers. What can SEPTA do to stem the financial tide if the federal government doesn't step in to provide the relief it really needs? Because that's key for you guys, as well as other major transportation systems throughout the country.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark reality that we're facing right now. You're correct in saying regional rail levels are down around 10 or 15% of normal. Our transit levels are about 70% of normal. So what that means is that right now we're losing about $1 million a day at the fare box. Luckily, we were given CARES funding by the federal government. That has been a lifeline to us. It has allowed us to continue to operate service through the pandemic. And right now, we anticipate that CARES funding will be able to fill that kind of $1 million a day gap through next summer. And so that actually puts us in a better space than a lot of our peer transit agencies across the country. You're probably seeing lots of articles now talking about MTA in New York and WMATA down in DC, and they're having to make, just fairly drastic cuts in terms of their budgets. We have a little bit of time, which is really kind of helping us right now figure out strategically how we deal with that budget gap. But all of these transit agencies are really in the same boat. We do need a second CARES funding bill that continues to keep us afloat after summer, or you are going to see significant service cuts in the region. At this point, pretty much everything is on the table for us. It's not a small budget gap to fill.
Right.
So we need to keep all of that on the table. But we have been doing a lot of work with our elected officials as well as our peer transit agencies to really sound that alarm across the country that we do need additional federal assistance to stay afloat.
Changing topics just a little bit, for when the Department of Health restrictions are lifted, and now that a large portion of the greater Delaware Valley workforce has experienced work from home, one of the real questions that we have is, will employees come back into the office full time? My conversations with Jerry Sweeney at Brandywine Real Estate Trust, as well as very recently with Michael Castello from Unispace, we talked about the hybrid model for people in the workplace and the trends that exist there, that we're already going in that direction with more of a work from home philosophy, and that the pandemic just, really accelerated that process in a big way. What is SEPTA looking at with adjustments to the schedule and the transportation flow in and out of the city and throughout the system? Different hours of the day, different days of the week. Obviously, it's a very broad reaching question, so I'll kind of let it go with that.
Yeah, so I think we are seeing the same things, and we are anticipating the same future. It's clear to us and our planning teams that telework is here to stay. I think SEPTA itself is a good example. Prior to the pandemic, teleworking was actually prohibited. And now as an organization, we've really embraced it, and we've figured out different ways for our employees to work from home. I don't anticipate us becoming a fully remote organization.
Right.
That's not possible for what we do. But I think all of us agree that teleworking and telecommuting are going to be a part of our company's future in some way. And I'm sure we're not alone in that. So while, obviously that presents a challenge to us because it does result in reduced ridership. If you're only riding 3 days a week instead of 5, we're going to see some impacts from that. We're really choosing to look at it as an opportunity to rethink how we provide that service. So right now, SEPTA or pre-pandemic, SEPTA really provided a lot of what we call peaked service. We have a really strong morning and afternoon peak commute in the Delaware Valley. And so we had to provide a lot of service in the morning and the early evening to get people to and from work. And those peak periods really took up a lot of resources for us, right? Operator hours, vehicles, manpower, all of those things. The likely impact of increased telework in the region is that those peaks will flatten a bit, and that we're no longer going to see as much of a demand during those 2 very intense time periods in the day. So what we can do is reallocate some of the resources that we were providing during those peak hours so that we can provide more consistent, frequent all-day service. And what we're really seeing across the country is a shift to this new kind of transit network that's referred to as a lifestyle network. And that means you're not stuck checking schedules. You know that if you show up at a bus stop or a subway stop or a regional rail stop, that there's likely to be a train or a bus there within the next, say, 15 minutes. This was something we worked on earlier this year. In our frequent network for buses, and really creating a network of buses that came every 15 minutes. What it means is that more people use transit for more uses. So instead of someone just using SEPTA to get to work in the morning and the afternoon, because that's when we provide a lot of service, now they end up using us for errands or doctor's appointments or going to other places in the middle of the day because that frequency is there. So we've already begun to think about how we can respond to those changing needs. We recently released our first ever 3-day pass for both regional rail and transit, already starting to respond to the fact that it's unlikely that everyone is going to continue to take us 5 days a week. So we really see this as an opportunity. And part of that is making sure we have the technology to make us more agile and able to pivot more easily. So right now, if we want to change our schedules, it is a month-long process upfront. It's a pretty heavy lift. And that means that we can't always respond to the changing needs of our riders as quickly. So we're looking at ways that we can be more flexible. One of the things that we've just embarked on that I know many of us internally are very excited about is an effort to equip all of our vehicles with what are called automatic passenger counters, or APCs. Some of you may have noticed these. It's little black boxes on the door. There's actually a laser between them. When you break that laser, it counts you. And so what that means is we can see in real time how many people are riding each of our vehicles. And having that type of powerful data in the future is how we're going to be able to create and shift service around the different ways that people travel.
That's great. That's fantastic. And now there's also a lot of fear about being on trains and buses and everything from a health standpoint. I mean, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic still, with the latest updates that were done by the Department of Health, people are just fearful. And the question is, what is the game plan to convince people that it's okay to go on these methods of public transportation? Like, I know essential workers have been on them. I know that I've been on them, and I've always felt safe on them personally. I mean, I think it's what led us to our initial conversation. But what has SEPTA been doing with regards to boosting health security on mass transit? Like, what have you guys already done, and what's the plan going forward?
Yeah, it's really understandable that people would be apprehensive about getting back on transit. I mean, anything that involves being in a crowd is inherently, I think, a little more stressful right now. I know even for me, when I'm watching TV shows and there's a crowd in the show or the movie, I kind of tense up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
We're not even used to seeing people in crowds anymore. But there have actually been several different research studies that have come out over the past couple of months, both in the United States as well as over in Europe and Asia, that have clearly shown that transit is not a vector in COVID transmission as long as you're taking proper precautions. So that's why, we really focused on how can our riders ride safely. And back in the summer, we put out a 10-point safe travel plan that really summarizes what are we doing and what do you need to do in order to ride SEPTA safely. We also pulled together an employer toolkit that emphasizes some of those points and helps employers share information with their employees about riding safely. Again, I don't think a lot of employers are going to be distributing that toolkit right about now, but it's there on our website if anybody needs it. And hopefully in the winter and the spring, it will really be a helpful document. So what is this 10-point plan focused on? Like I said, it's kind of a combination of what we're doing and what you should be doing. Obviously, the most important thing is enhancing cleaning and sanitizing. And we are cleaning our system like we never really have before. I think anyone who has been on our system has likely noticed that.
Yeah.
Our vehicles are cleaned and sanitized at least twice a day. Our stations are being cleaned far more often. We have high-touch cleaners who spend their time just wiping down and sanitizing high-touch surfaces. So we're really doing our part when it comes to enhancing our cleaning and sanitizing protocols. At the same time, we're not just resting on what we've done in the past to be the best practice going forward. We have a lot of employees as well as some partnerships with outside organizations to review and test innovative cleaning solutions and procedures. We have a very rigorous program to evaluate them. And as we find these new and innovative cleaning solutions, we're bringing them into our regular cleaning schedules. We're increasing and adapting service. We talked about that already a little bit, trying to make sure that we're providing the right levels that people need. Hopefully everyone knows by now, if you are going to ride SEPTA, you better have a mask on.
Yes.
Masks are required on our vehicles, in our stations, and in our facilities. I'm happy to report that we've been doing monthly compliance checks with thousands of checks throughout the system, and we're seeing mask compliance. About 90% of our riders are wearing masks correctly. Another 7% are wearing masks, but maybe not the right way, usually a nose hanging out. So that, that's pretty good compliance for something that 6 months ago, we weren't doing at all. We also have groups of what we call social distancing coaches that have been going to high traffic areas and handing out free reusable cloth masks to our riders. Even if they have a mask on that day, the more masks they have in their possession, the more likely they are to use them. So we're going to continue doing that. We also have encouraged social distancing where we can. Those of you that have been on our vehicles, especially our regional rail cars, have noticed that we now have decals on the seats that help you figure out where to safely sit.
Yes.
On the vehicle. I find them very helpful myself. I am still going into the office at least one day a week, and there's been one or two times where the decals are peeled off, and I kind of feel for a minute like, okay, what do I do? Where do I sit? So we will be continuing to do that. We're also making sure our employees are healthy, because if we have an employee who is tested positive for COVID, we don't want them to expose other riders. So we're providing them with a significant amount of PPE. We actually built operator barriers in all of our vehicles so they are separated from our riders by plexiglass. And we instituted our own internal COVID testing program with the Black Doctors Consortium, where we test it regularly on SEPTA property. Also importantly, we really stepped up our communications game. We communicate regularly through social media, through our website. As I mentioned before, we're really talking to employers in the region in a way that we haven't before, and making sure that we get information out as quickly as possible. We've created car cards that go in different vehicles so that while you're riding, you're seeing information about COVID. And just, again, continuing to communicate as often and in as many ways as we can. We also have increased our opportunities for SEPTA Key, which is our contactless fair payment card. So we were able during the pandemic to roll that out onto regional rail. To make sure that our customers had a contactless way to pay instead of having to deal with cash and a conductor. And last, but certainly not least, we've actually really done a very strong job internally of trying to plan for the future and anticipate what comes next with COVID, as well as how SEPTA recovers as a whole. We do have a COVID recovery plan that's on SEPTA's website that helps outline some of this. And I would really kind of send anyone to our COVID-19 microsite on septa.org. You'll see it right there from the homepage. You can click into it. There is just a wealth of information on all the efforts that we're doing in terms of COVID. You can find updated schedules. And more importantly, if the public or anyone watching this today, if you guys have questions or suggestions for how we can do things better, our customer service department would love to hear from you, whether it's via our phone number or on social media or shooting us an email.
And I know that SEPTA Social is extraordinarily responsive, and we're getting back to people. I've popped in there a few times, and usually it's pretty gosh darn fast. Quickly people do get back in touch with you. I know that I definitely need to get myself a SEPTA, like a mask with like the SEPTA transit map on it. I got to find that somewhere. I think I remember hearing about it, and I'm like, I definitely got to get one of those.
Yes. One of our advocacy groups, Fifth Square, is selling them. So you can go to the Fifth Square website.
It's Fifth Square. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. It's a little plug for Fifth Square. Okay. So, and as we do with everybody on this show, I have this thing called Wisdom on the Wall, words that you live by, your credo, something that matters to you either personally, professionally, or both. What would that be for you?
I think for me, it's definitely something that's always changing. But in the past 10 years, where I've really grown, both personally and professionally, is by forcing myself outside of my comfort zone. And I think it's, no surprise to anyone. We know that that's where a lot of growth occurs, but it's really hard to get there. When I started working on the King of Prussia Rail project and I first came to SEPTA, it was really my first touch point with a project that involved a lot of public hearings and some fairly angry residents as part of the project as well. And believe it or not, I'm sure I seem very comfortable to everyone on the show right now. But I was absolutely petrified of public speaking, like sweaty palms, nervous in the pit of my stomach.
Right.
I would do anything to get out of a presentation. And I was very fortunate. I had a boss at the time who said, listen, you're really great at talking to people. I think you would be really good at this. And he pushed me into giving some presentations for the King of Prussia project. And I actually found that to be one of my strongest skill sets, and it still is. That public speaking now is what I pride myself on. So, I very much went from not ever wanting to do it and being scared of it to it being something I feel very comfortable doing now, and something that I get, complimented on all of the time. And I think it's really helped launch me in my career. If you can stand in front of a crowd and express yourself well, people stand up and notice that. And so that's one of the reasons I think that I am where I am in SEPTA right now. But it doesn't stop in the office. I try and do the same thing in my personal life, whether it is forcing myself to love running, which is something that I started about 10 years ago.
Nice.
Always hated it. Forced myself to train for Broad Street. And is that not just the best run that you can do here in Philadelphia? And now
Indeed.
It's a part of the year that I really look forward to. I've made running friends. I've gotten closer with members of my family through running, And again, I think it really helped me prove to myself that I could do hard things. And that has done wonders for my self-confidence moving forward. So that would be my credo, is push yourself outside your comfort zone, because that's where you're going to grow.
Liz Smith from SEPTA, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an honor and a privilege. And hopefully a lot of people get a lot of great information. And hopefully we can have you back on as we start to really reopen things back up to keep people informed as to what's coming up and what the employers can look forward to here in the region. Thank you, everybody, for coming on to watching the show this week. We'll be taking a little bit of a week off for Thanksgiving here in the United States, and we'll be having another exciting interview the week after that. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.